Hello, welcome and well done if you've managed to find this video. I'm going to show you a workaround to batch process raw files in Affinity Photo 2. So let's get straight into it. Here are some raw images, 10 raw images, and I want to apply the same edits to all of these raw images. So first of all, we take one of them as an example. It doesn't matter which one. So open, I'll take one of these ones from the center of my series. And here it is. It's opened as a raw image in the develop persona of Affinity Photo 2. One other thing to make sure that you have got set in the output is that you've got the raw layer linked or embedded, but linked is fine and it keeps the file sizes down if you're outputting to an Affinity Photo project. So linked is fine for the purposes of what we're going to do. So here's my image, and I'm now going to apply the changes that I want to make for this image and ultimately for all the images in my series. So I'm going to change the exposure slightly. I want to lift it up a little bit more. That'll be fine. Of course, this is all very subjective depending on what images you've got and what changes you want to make. I'm going to increase the clarity a bit, 10%, and I'm going to increase the saturation, say by 10%. I'm going to alter the white balance because it's looking a little bit warm. That's better. And that's fine. In the details tab, do I want to do anything here? I'm just going to add a touch of noise reduction just in case there is some. 7% maybe about right. I'm going to match that on the color. And I'm almost there. I think I'm going to make one small tone curves adjustment just to give it a little bit more contrast. Fantastic. And that's it. Those are all the changes I want to make. So at this point, I'm going to hit the develop button, which will take me into the photo persona. And because I had that linked option set up, this is no longer a pure pixel layer. It is a raw image layer. And if I double click this, it will take me back into the develop persona, and all the edits that I made are still intact. And that's a key difference between version 1 of Affinity Photo and version 2. So let's just redevelop this again, take us back into the photo persona. Now what we want to do is record what we've just done as a macro. So very simply, go to the macro window. If you don't have that already open or available, if you go to the Windows menu at the top here and make sure you've got macro selected, that'll bring up this the macro option, and we're going to hit record. So we're going to start recording, and all we're going to do is come back to our raw image layer, double click the icon again, which will take us back into the develop persona, and you can see again all our changes that we made to white balance, exposure, etc. are all intact. And what all purely going to do is redevelop the image. I'm not going to touch anything else. Redevelop the image, and you can see in the macro pane here it's recorded this single step called develop, and that's all we want to do. So we're going to stop recording by pushing this little button and then save it and add it to our library. So I'm going to put it in the category that I call my macros, and I'm going to give it a name, something like moon test, and say okay. We're almost there. So I'm going to close this down now. Don't need it anymore because we've got the steps recorded in our macro. Do you want to save your changes? No. So now we can do the batch process. So come up to File, New Batch Job. We're going to add all our 10 images in. add, here they are, add those in. On the right hand side are the controls relating to the output file and the attributes associated with the output file. So you can either save your output file into the same location, or you can specify a different location if you want to here. I'm going to leave mine as the same, and for my purposes I want to create TIFF files as my output. I don't want to save them as Affinity Photo project files, although you can do if you obviously want to. So I'm going to unselect that, and over here on the far right hand side is options related to the attributes of that TIFF file. So for my purposes, I want it to be 32-bit, and the resampling method I want to use is this one, and the color profile I want is ROM RGB, and the compression that I want to use is none at all, because I'm not bothered about the file size for this particular example. So those are the attributes I've selected for my purposes, and the only other thing we have to do now is apply that macro that we created. So just finding it here in my macros, and there it is at the bottom, moon test, and you hit apply, and it shows you what macros are going to be applied in this window here, and that's it. And at this point we just push OK, and it will start batch processing those raw files. And you can see over on the left hand side over here what it's doing. It's loading at the moment all the 10 files. It started to apply the macros to the files, and it shouldn't take very long before it starts outputting the TIFF files as well. And you can see one of them's finished already. Obviously, if you've got to load more files to process, then you just leave the application running. It's finished, so let's have a look at the result. And here you can see that as well as my 10 original files, I now have 10 TIFF files with those raw edits applied, because you can see the exposure and the white balance as a marked effect. And that's it. I hope you found that useful.